Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start now. We're going to start off with Chief Trey Mayo, and then we'll hear from Secretary Causey.
Good afternoon. Trey Mayo, Fire Chief for the City of Winston-Salem. So we had a press briefing this morning about 9 or 9:30. It is now 20 minutes past 3 Monday afternoon. I have a few updates. Post what has, it's just kind of what has gone on during the day in no particular order. We have Piedmont Natural Gas. We had a couple of 2-inch gas lines that were free-flowing natural gas into the vicinity of the fertilizer plant. Piedmont Natural Gas, under cover of one of our fire companies, went in about 2 hours ago and shut off the valves to stop that flow of gas. We've been able to do aerial surveillance and have determined that as we speak, there is not an imminent heat threat to the rail car on the back of the facility that contains about 100 tons of ammonium nitrate. That was a concern this morning before we could get eyes on that and see what that situation looked like. This morning we talked about perhaps considering pulling back from a 1-mile evacuation zone to a half-mile 36 hours into the event, which would be about 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, Wednesday. We are not going to do that. We are going to maintain the 1-mile evacuation radius around the plant. Before midnight tonight, the EPA is on site, and before midnight tonight, they will be broadcasting air quality data back to the command post. And at that time, we think we're probably going to release North Carolina Regional Response Team 5, the hazardous materials team that is here from Greensboro. The wind direction overnight and into this morning was out of the southwest. So the wind, if you look behind you, you can see that the smoke plume is pretty vertical. The wind is changing direction. It's going to come around it's coming around to the east, and later this afternoon into the evening, the wind is going to come around and be blowing out of the northwest. So residents who are northwest of the plant need to be expecting that tonight, to be able to see a haze in the air and to be able to smell that odor that smells like spent fireworks. And what you're smelling is the primary components that we've been able to determine in the products of combustion, which are some compounds of sulfur and ammonia. They are generally regarded just as irritants. They are not particularly toxic, but we still recommend folks who have sensitive respiratory systems to avoid being outside, to remain indoors with doors and windows shut. We do not encourage folks to be out exercising, running and walking and doing that sort of thing if they can see or smell, if they can see smoke or smell the odor from the products of combustion. We're still maintaining 3 fire department strike teams in the area to respond to anything in the event that there's a drastic change in the conditions. But the way the fire is behaving now is what we would like for it to continue to do, and that is burn off through surface combustion and consume the bulk of that ammonium nitrate. We do not know what the rate of consumption is. We just need it to burn out of fuel. But again, we're talking about 500 tons of product, and we are unable to determine what its rate of consumption is. I would like to take this opportunity to thank some folks who this has been a colossal effort being coordinated over multiple agencies, and you know the risk you take when you start naming names is you leave somebody out, but I'm going to give it my best shot. So agencies that have been assisting in this effort: Winston-Salem Police Department, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Emergency Management, Greensboro Fire Department, North Carolina Regional Response Team 5, Louisville Fire Department is here with a drone, Colonelsville Fire Department, and there are a number of fire departments that surround us in Forsyth County that have been filling in our stations and answering calls in the city since last night. Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, Forsyth County EMS, Forsyth County Emergency Services, Fultz Record Service, the EPA is here, the ATF, the Office of State Fire Marshal is here, Piedmont Natural Gas, and Duke Energy. And again, I'm sure I missed somebody, and I'll apologize ahead of time to those folks. I will be here to take questions. That concludes my report. I'd like to give North Carolina Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Causey, an opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Chief Mayo. I'm Mike Causey, North Carolina Commissioner of Insurance and State Fire Marshal. I want to thank Chief Mayo for his leadership and all of our first responders that have put their lives on the line over the past 24 hours, as they do every day, to protect us. This is a tragic situation, a dangerous situation, still very volatile, but I want to applaud Chief Mayo for the way he's handled this and the calm manner that he's approached this to bring all of these teams. I thank the Greensboro Fire Department, Winston-Salem Fire Department, Winston-Salem Police Department, and I think there's at least 250 first responders on scene. We have a drone here from the Office of State Fire Marshal, as well as two Office of State Fire Marshal investigators. We've seen too many tragedies similar to this. We're just still dealing with the QVC massive fire that we dealt with up in Rocky Mount, where we saw a lot of jobs lost. As I was talking with Commissioner Troxler this morning, he was telling me there's already a shortage of fertilizer, and now a loss of a fertilizer plant makes that shortage even worse. And this is from what I understand, this is a North Carolina company. The headquarters is in Northampton County, but our hearts and prayers go out to the residents that have had to evacuate for safety reasons, and the employees. But I tell people the Department of Insurance and the Office of State Fire Marshal is here to help. And if any citizen has a question about insurance, if their insurance will pay for relocating, which most homeowners policies do, we can answer those questions for those folks that need help. And the same thing with any help, any questions the first responders might have. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, Chief Mayo, for giving me this chance.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate your support. And I should have done this when we got started. I need to introduce some folks that are behind me here as you spool up with your questions from your left to right. Director of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Emergency Management, August Vernon. Standing next to him is the chairman of the city's Public Safety Committee, James Taylor, representing the Southeast Ward. Police Chief, City of Winston-Salem Police Chief Katrina Thompson is here, and the Secretary of the Department of Public Safety for the state, Secretary Eddie Buffalo. So we appreciate them showing up and offering their support, and we'll take whatever questions you have.
Sir, you mentioned that there was no heat threat with that rail car. How close is the fire coming to that at this point, and where is that positioned in relation to the plant?
So the question is, how close is the active fire to the rail car that is behind the facility that contains 100 tons of ammonium nitrate? And it's in a distance that would be measured in feet, but the fire is not burning with so much intensity that it is creating a radiant heat threat to that rail car. It's not that the fire is that far away. It's just that the fire is not that big.
Has the fire changed in size your last update at 9 o'clock this morning?
Yes, so the fire is smaller now than it was at 9 o'clock this morning. A lot of the structural components of the building have been completely consumed, and some of the product has burned off. We just don't know in terms of a solid volume. We don't know how much of the product has been consumed.
For the potential of an explosion, is that helpful, and what is that still the 36-hour window you're looking at?
The question is about the potential for explosion and the amount of product that is left burning. And yes, a reduced amount of product is favorable for reducing the chance of an explosion, but experts in ammonium nitrate still tell us that we really should not get too comfortable about not having an explosion for a solid 36 hours, which would be 7 a.m. Wednesday morning. But we will continue to gather information, and that's an estimation based on past experience. That's not something that you can take to the bank.
Is that estimation what you're going off of to keep people evacuated? Like that 36-hour mark, once we know that there's not any more explosion risk, is when people can come back to their homes?
My guess right now is that we're probably going to maintain that 1 mile evacuation distance probably for 48 hours. Again, some of these decisions are made based on lack of full information, and that may change, but right now I'm going to stand that we're going to hold at 1 mile for 48 hours, which will be 7 p.m. Wednesday.
Why are the evacuations voluntary and not mandatory?
We live in a free country, and it is, we just are, our capacity to force people to leave their homes is limited.
I guess my follow-up to that is, to somebody who is still within that 1 mile, you would say what to them before tonight?
I would say this is a serious situation. A precedent has been established with the 2013 explosion at the fertilizer plant in West Texas. That explosion killed 15 people and leveled about 150 buildings, and we have at least 3 times as much product on hand here as they had in West Texas. So I don't know how much more compelling I can be to try to make people understand the seriousness of this situation. Somebody who has spent many decades in the fire service texted me earlier and said this is potentially the largest explosion in U.S. history. I don't know. I can't magnify it any more than that.
What are the latest nitrous oxide readings?
Okay. I'm sorry, Sarah.
The latest nitrous oxide readings?
The question is, what are the latest nitrous oxide readings? And we are not measuring nitrous oxide in a significant amount at all. The hazardous materials technicians who are here working have determined that the primary components of the products of combustion are sulfates, sulfur compounds, and ammonia. And again, they are generally regarded as irritants. Their toxicity is relatively low.
And I wonder, I'm not sure if you're the right person, if there's someone from the city that might be able to speak to this, but we're hearing that there's no transportation within that 1 mile zone, and that's leaving some people, without a way to maybe get to the evacuation/shelter site or get to another place. Is there anyone that could maybe speak on that? Is there any city transportation that might be available if there's still someone that's within a mile of the place?
The question is about public transportation out of the evacuation zone, and I'm going to ask Director Vernon to answer that question.
Good afternoon, August Vernon, Director of Winston-Salem for Forsyth County Office of Emergency Management. And what was the question?
Yes, so we're hearing from some people that they are within that 1 mile zone and they would like to leave, but they don't have transportation, normally rely on public transportation. They haven't seen any buses, don't know if they're running. Or is there any public transportation within that zone or anything being made available outside of the normal routes to get people out of there if they want to leave?
Yes, absolutely. So last night, in any situation like this, you always ask that the public, especially now in the midst of COVID, that we ask people to use friends or family. Also, in this evacuation, a lot of the citizens in this area don't have a vehicle. So at their own risk, if family members or friends want to go get someone, apparently a message went out yesterday that we weren't allowing that. We are allowing people to go in and get their loved ones and get them out. We've used the police department to move individuals. We also had the fire department going through the areas and asking for those that needed rides, and WISTA is providing that under unique circumstances. So what we would ask right now is the public, if you still want to leave the area, again, we would first ask that you use friends or family, and number two, you can reach out to the city of Winston-Salem CityLink for additional information on that. All right, thank you.
Chief Mayo, I think this morning you were asked if there was anybody in the plant last night when the fire broke out and it was unclear still. Do you have an update on that?
I don't have an update on that. Do you know, August, was anybody in the facility when the call came in? Do you know?
I'm sorry about that. Was there anybody in the facility? I am not aware of that. There is an investigation that obviously has already started and will take some time. That is being conducted at a different site from here, using different personnel, different agencies. We know it's happening, so I don't think we really know the answers to that right now.
Is the fertilizer plant usually up and running at that hour, around the 7 o'clock time frame?
I don't have the answer whether or not they were up and running at that time of night.
Do we know if the company has had trouble reaching any of its employees?
From a response standpoint, we're not aware. The question is, are we aware of any missing employees? We are not aware of anything like that. We have had representatives from the company here on site at the command post and are in constant communications with them. So we're not aware of anything like that, and we've not heard from anyone calling in about a missing friend or family member.
So the company, you're working with the company, but they're unable to say whether there were employees in the building at the time?
I'm not aware of that question. I've not been part of that conversation, but obviously that came up last night during the initial response that would come up with any type of fire, and it's not been a concern.
Chief, I know you mentioned that the fire has gotten smaller in size. You also talked about the wind kind of changing direction. Are we thinking that this is on a downward trajectory from here, or is it possible that it flares back up because of the wind situation?
The question is about the size of the fire and will it continue to diminish, or is there a chance for it to flare up? And the answer is ammonium nitrate is somewhat unpredictable. It has a history of kind of initiating a sort of a runaway exothermic reaction. So we are not out of the woods. The fire is behaving as we would like for it to behave to consume the product, but we cannot write off the chance that there's a collapse in the pile. It gets a fresh breath of air, and we have flaming combustion on the scale that we did last night. So yeah.
Are there any other structures, homes, businesses, anything else around there that has been damaged, whether it is, smoke damage or, fire, heat damage from the beginning of this fire? Is there other damage to other structures around?
The question is about fire or heat damage to adjacent buildings. There very potentially could be some smoke damage in buildings that were immediately downstream of the smoke plume last night into this morning, because it was laying pretty low to the ground. I am unaware of any fire or heat damage to any buildings that are not part of the fertilizer facility.
Can you share some insight into how much notice your teams might have that an explosion is happening? Is this an instant, or is this, you can track some of the conditions and say we have 15 minutes, we have 2 hours? Can you share some insight into how you monitor those timelines?
The question is there any sort of predictability about the potential for an explosion? And there is not. Largely because you can't get in close enough to be able to monitor the product close enough to be able to make any sort of determination about that. And that's why when we realized how much the product was on site last night, we began immediately to make preparations to move firefighters and fire apparatus outside the 1 mile evacuation zone because of the very unpredictable nature of this product.
What would you need to see to switch from the voluntary evacuation to this is a mandatory, you have to leave? Is there something that in your monitoring you would see to make that switch?
That would have to be a decision made at a high level involving elected leaders with legal counsel. And I probably don't need to speculate on that anymore, but I would like to very strongly urge folks, if you're aware of this, if you have friends, family that are in this area who have not evacuated, again, I don't know how much stronger to make the recommendation that you leave that 1 mile area around the plant and be prepared to stay out at least through 7 o'clock Wednesday night.
And
Chief,
lastly,
is the
can you
plan
share
a
some
total loss?
insight into how your fire crews are doing at this point?
Repeat that question, please.
Could you share some insight just to how your crews are doing at this point? It's been hours now. How are
The
they feeling?
question is about how the crews are doing. So we're rotating crews in and out so that we're keeping fresh folks in. So again, the request for service came in about 7 o'clock last night. We rotated crews throughout the night. We changed shifts at 7:30 this morning. So the crews that came on at 7:30 this morning were not the ones who responded last night. And we keep a pretty close check on folks in terms of their physical and mental well-being, and rotate and call off-duty personnel as is appropriate for that, for what we're observing. John?
Again, do you have the estimated damage to the plant, or is it a total loss?
I can't speak intelligently about either one of those things. I don't know what the value is, and we don't know what the loss will be until we can get the fire completely extinguished and plant representatives can go in and assess the damage, and that may be days.
And then with the quick response and the high volume of crews that were on the scene so quickly, do you think that helped from making the scene turn even worse and helped it from not getting that bad?
The question is about our response time and the resulting limit of damage due to getting crews on scene quickly, and the conventional wisdom in the fire business is the faster we can get there and start intervention in whatever the crisis is, whether it be a medical emergency, a fire, a natural disaster. Typically, the faster we can get there and start interventions, the better the outcome of that event.
And I have a question about if you're communicating with the school district, we know that there's one school that has been put on remote learning for yesterday, was just announced that it's put on remote learning today. I wonder, in your conversations with the school district, I would imagine that their decision to go virtual will probably correspond with how long the evacuation zone is set up, how long this thing is going, the possibility for an explosion. Maybe give us a window in your conversations with them.
The question is about conversations with the school system. I have not had any conversations with the school system. I know last night Police Chief Thompson contacted the superintendent. Chief Thompson, is there anything you have to share about that regarding your conversation with the school system and any decisions they may make based on the duration of this incident?
Sure. So if I'm understanding you correctly, the question is what kind of contact we've had with the school system?
Yeah, just what your conversations have been like. They went virtual yesterday. Today. They're going to go virtual tomorrow. I would imagine that in your conversations, they're probably going to be virtual as long as there is an active threat of explosion, smoke, that kind of thing.
So the question is whether or not the school system will be virtual as long as there's an active smoke or threat of danger. Of course, that question will have to actually be answered by the school system. What we thought was our responsibility was to notify the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School System, which we did, to let them know what we had and the fact that we had the 1 mile evacuation radius going on. And of course, there was at least one school really, really close to that 1 mile within the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School District. I will mention that there was also a private school, at least one, that I was aware of and had made contact with that was also really close to that 1 mile radius.
But no indication just yet that it could go beyond tomorrow.
Whether or not it will go beyond tomorrow will be a decision that will have to be made by the school system. We will continue to be in contact with them and share with them the latest information that we have. Of course, the safety of our children, of all of our citizens, but especially our children, is of utmost importance. So we'll make sure we're providing the most up-to-date information for them to make that decision.
Chief, do you know if the plant had a risk minimum ban on fire? And if so, what would that kind of look like, or are they required to have one?
The question is about having a risk management plan on site, and if one was in existence. And my answer to that would be speculative. What I can tell you is that the fire department does code enforcement inspections in accordance with the North Carolina State Fire Code, and the last inspection was completed on December 21st of 2021, and we did not note any violations in accordance with the fire code.
So it had an adequate sprinkler system, fire suppression system?
I do not believe this facility was equipped with with a commercial fire sprinkler system. More than anything, due to the age of the building. If I think I'm accurate on this, when this building was constructed, there probably was not any kind of consensus fire code in the state of North Carolina. Parts of this building are 80 plus years old.
Is the sprinkler system required?
It would be in the current code, but when the building was built, I don't believe so. I don't even think there was a fire code when this building was constructed.
Chief, do you know how much manpower was on the ground to attack the fire last night?
I didn't get an exact personnel count, but based on, so we went to 3 alarms, which for us would be 9 engine companies and 3 ladder companies, a on-duty battalion chiefs, a rescue company. I would estimate about 60.
And how many today?
So we have 3 2-engine strike teams, so 21 firefighters approximately, plus probably a dozen administrative staff in filling various roles in the command post. And that question was how many firefighters are working this incident today, and you know those strike teams are in addition to our regular on-duty staffing, which is probably about somewhere between 75 and 90.
I guess the only other thing I have is this morning you were saying you did not plan to send any additional crews in from your department for 48 hours, so that takes us till about 7 o'clock tomorrow night.
Right.
What was that timeline based off of? Was that just how long you anticipated it would take to burn off the chemicals inside the building?
The question is about how do we estimate when it's safe for crews to approach the buildings that have been involved in the fire. And the answer to that is, I think I stated earlier, that we are making decisions based on lack of full information. But that 48-hour kind of minimum wait to go in time span is just based on the expert advice we've gotten from around the country with folks who are in the business of dealing with ammonium nitrate and fertilizer plant fires.
So it's possible that after a certain period of time you will be able to get in there and knock the small amount that's left down yourselves?
At some point we will be able to get in there and completely extinguish the fire. And again, the minimum time would be 48 hours, but I will not be surprised at all if it's a week or 10 days.
Are you nervous as you stand here right now, knowing the unpredictability of it all, and as fire chief and not being able to go down there and really do anything about it?
Nervous. The question is, am I nervous? I'm not nervous, but I'll tell you that I've been in this business 33 years, and when I learned how much ammonium nitrate was on site last night, I felt as uneasy at a fire scene as I've ever felt in 33 years in this business. So, somebody made the point last night that when the fire department leaves an incident like that, everybody else needs to perk their ears up and pay attention to what's going on. So when the fire department moves back a mile, it's difficult for me to understand why the ordinary citizen does not realize the gravity of that situation and move themselves back a mile also.